Hello. This tutorial we're going to merge the Action RPG inventory system into an existing project. So I've created a simple project based off the third-person template that we're going to migrate into. So we will start off with migrating the inventory system folder from the inventory project. I'll just merge it into the content folder here. So what I like to do is remove the intermediate and saved folders when I'm doing big changes like this. It may or may not help prevent glitches and crashes with the engine. So we'll start off with moving the actual inventory system itself, which is the components and inventory folders. And then we will work on migrating all the demo content. You'll get a message about a failure to save with the inventory player controller. That's okay. Just click continue and okay. Now what we'll need to do, because we've merged a pretty big chunk of code here, is just open them up, compile them, and save them. This way it just lets the editor in memory sort of update where things are. We'll do the same with the inventory player controller. Now I'll go ahead and remove the inventory folder. Next we'll move the usables folder. This contains the main demo content that shows how to use the usable interfaces with the inventory interfaces to create lootable containers. Now we're going to move the usable actor interface with the equipment character. The usable actor interface is what we use to basically say something in the world is usable, and the equipment character just contains the essentials needed to equip and unequip items from a character. There's no extra player character code in there. So in this example, your character is parented to base character. So in case maybe in your game you have NPCs and characters that are different character classes, but they share from this base character class. So what we want to do then is parent the equipment character to the base character, and then have your character parent to the equipment character. And if you look inside the equipment character, you can see how clean it is. It's essentially everything that's needed to equip and unequip these items and replicate the changes over multiplayer to players. So we'll go ahead and reparent this to base character. And this would be pretty straightforward if you wanted to merge it into your own character. So we're not going to go over that. So if we look inside your character, it's just a simple third-person character. So we'll just reparent that to equipment character, and you can see that now we've inherited the different equipment skeletal mesh slots. Now we'll go ahead into your player controller, and we're going to add the equipment inventory component. We'll just call it player inventory component. And then we will add the inventory manager component. The inventory manager component is what handles all the interactions between the player's inventory and other inventories in the world, which we call containers. So if you're looting another player, looting a corpse, picking up an item, it's all handled through the inventory manager component. So next we'll want to create two variables, bools called isMouseOverUI and isShiftKeyDown. Those will be used in the interface later. Now we want to go into the inventory manager component. We want to replace the cast from inventory player controller to your player controller. So in the use consumable item function here, it's actually calling some demo code. So when you consume an item, it sets your health. But to keep things simple in this merge, because it's very easy to merge this yourself and to cut time, we're just going to skip this part here. Next, we'll go into the set viewers container slot and replace the cast to controller. Pull off a get inventory manager component, and we'll plug that into the client set container slot item. And then we'll do the same here in clear viewers container slot. Okay, and that's it. The inventory system itself has been migrated over to your project. Now we will work on the demo content. The usable actor is the base usable class. The world actor, loot actor, container actor are children of the usable actor class. The container pot is a child of the container actor. The loot hero, loot skeleton are children of the loot actor. And the usable door is also a child of just the usable actor. So the world actor is what we drop into the world. It's a blueprint that pulls an item ID from the master item list and then generates the item. So we use it when a player drops an item in the world. We spawn from the inventory an item with the stats. We also use it to create these blueprint prefabs here so that you can drag and drop items and place them in the world that the player can pick up. You can see here you could just simply set the item ID and the amount, and it generates the item. One thing to note though is because the item generation happens on the construction script, you'll notice here that when you set a new item ID, let's use armor leather boots, that it updates in the viewport. Let's compile and save it. When we drag it into the game, it updates, but the thumbnail has not updated. And that's because for some reason with actor blueprints that have a static mesh, you have to go in and assign it for the thumbnail to show up in the editor. So we'll just assign the armor leather boots thumbnail, and you can see now it's updated. So if you notice that's not updating, it's not really an issue with the inventory system, it's just the way that the actor thumbnail generates in the engine. So if we go into the world actor, we need to go into the unused function and update the cast to inventory player controller to our new controller. Then we need to pull off the inventory manager component and the player inventory. And what this function does is when you call the unused, it's simply saying pick up this item and try and add it to your inventory. We'll go ahead and compile and save this, and then we'll open the container actor. And again, in the onActorUse function, we need to replace the controller reference. Just get the inventory manager component again. And in the container looted, we need to just update this server close container. So let's pull off the get owner, cast to your player controller, and get the inventory manager component. Now open up your player controller, minimize it, and we'll go into the inventory player controller. Go into the function initialize player. And this is how we initialize the inventory component as well as the inventory manager component. We get a reference to the character. Then you see that the server initialize inventory, we have the two components that we pass in. We call server load inventory. And from the player inventory component, we set the equipment character reference. Remember, the player inventory component is an equipment inventory component. And what we do is we set the character reference so it knows what character that it needs to update when you equip and unequip items. So let's go ahead and copy this. We'll also select the HUD setup here. And we'll grab the server initialize inventory. We'll recreate the character reference in our own controller. So we'll just paste that in here. We'll set a delay because sometimes it takes half a second for the game to update everyone's references and replicate things when you're playing an editor. Obviously, for your own game, you'd have a proper setup for loading in. We'll create a character reference here and set it to your character. We'll just move this over to make some room. Now we're going to get our control pawn, cast it to your character, and assign it to the character reference. We'll hook that up to the initialize inventory manager. Now the trick here is if you don't compile yet, it's not going to tell us that we're missing these variables. So we'll hook in the equipment character reference there. We'll create the HUD reference. We'll pick HUD layout. If you had your own HUD file, you'd want to select that and then add in the inventory layout into your HUD. And we'll get into that in the next section when we cover the UI migration. We'll compile and save it. Let's move this HUD over since we don't have our own HUD class in this example. Rename it to your HUD. And if we take a look inside of it, you can see it's simply just creating the HUD layout, adding it to the viewport. And then we have the code to draw a crosshair in the middle of the screen. Nothing fancy. Okay, so let's head back into the inventory player controller and we'll move the last few things that we need for now. Let's take the basic input for opening and closing the different windows. We'll also grab the input for the hotbar slots and holding down Shift. We'll just copy these and paste them here into our player controller. You can see here it just simply calls the inventory manager UI component stuff to open and close the different windows, and the hotbar slots trigger using the item at those slots. Okay, we'll compile and save. In the next section, we'll work on migrating the demo UI. So if you go into the HUD layout, you can see that we have the player frame and the interact text, which are for the demo, and there's an inventory layout, which is actually all of the inventory UI in another separate HUD layout file to make it easier to integrate in your projects. When you've added the inventory layout to your own HUD, you want to make sure that you've anchored it full, that you've set the offsets to 0. And to add it to your own HUD, you'd simply go into the user created and drag the inventory layout. Make sure you call it something like inventory for the variable name. Next, we will work on updating all the controller references to your controller. So in the inventory layout, we want to get owning player, cast to your player controller, get the inventory manager component, and we're going to be doing a bit of this for the next few minutes. This is the fun part. Luckily, you only have to do it once. So next we'll go into the inventory folder, open up the backpack. Same thing, we'll update to your controller reference. Let's go ahead and hook up the inventory manager component here. And in this next spot, we want to set isMos over UI in the controller reference. So we'll hook that up. Okay, we'll go ahead and compile. Got an error here, so let's see. Need to, okay, set up the gold. So we'll get the inventory manager component again, and then we'll just plug it into the gold int. Compile and save. Now we'll want to copy the two isMos over UI because we need to paste them in two places in a moment. Go into the character, and again, we'll change the controller reference. We'll hook that up, and we'll get the inventory manager component again. Okay, and then we'll paste in the isMos over UI and quickly hook that up. Compile and save. Go into the container, and again, change the controller reference. Get the inventory manager component, hook that into server closed container. And then paste in the isMos over UI again. Go into the container slot. Again, cast the reference and get the inventory manager component. And in the on job, we're going to need to set up the is shift key down. So we'll grab that from the controller reference. Get it again. Compile and save. It's all good. Now we can skip the next couple and go into hotbar slot, where we update the reference again. Okay, now for the last one, for the inventory UI. Go into the inventory slot, update the reference. Go ahead and get the inventory manager component. And then we need to set up the is shift key down. So I'll get that from the controller reference. And compile and save. Okay, now let's update the demo HUD stuff here. Let's go into the interact text and set the controller to your player controller. Let's go into the player frame, update the reference. And we will also need to update some variables here. So instead of setting this up, let's just go ahead and delete this variable name here and just write in one. And then we'll remove these health variables. Just set it so it shows the bar at full. And then assign a value for our health text of just 100, 100. Okay, now let's check to make sure our game mode is set up. So let's use your HUD, your player controller. Okay, level's using the right one. Now let's just quickly test. Okay, so we've got our HUD loaded. If we hit I, we've got the inventory and the equipment screens. We can drag it around. And now we'll go ahead and migrate from the inventory player controller the interaction functions. Because in this project, we obviously don't have anything. But if in your own you have a way to use items in the world, you can simply skip this part and hook up your own unused functions. Okay, so let's create the functions we need. We need onActorUsed. We need getUsableActor. And getUsableActorFocus. Now the getUsableActor is going to return an actor reference. Compile and save. And we need 3 variables. So we need isNewFocus, which is a bool. We need lastUsableActor, which is an actor reference. And then we need a maxUseDistance, which is a float. And we'll set that to 200. Okay, so let's go back to our inventory player controller into the onUse function, and we're simply just going to cut and paste the code here. And we'll hook that up. Now go back into the getUsableActor. What this does is it casts a raycast from the camera a certain distance to see if there's an actor you can interact with. And when it hits something, it checks to make sure the actor has the usable actor interface. That way we know it's something that we want to use. So just go ahead and copy this. We'll paste it in here. We'll set up an isValid here because we're not going to be using isMovementLocked. So we want to make sure we don't get any errors when we're trying to call the reference if it's invalid. We'll get the follow camera and hook that up, then get the camera boom. And this bit of logic here lets you change the max use distance depending on your camera zoom. Okay, we'll just hook up the actor here on the return node, compile and save. Now for the getUsableActor focus, you can see at the end we have the setActor text, getActionText for the interact stuff. We're not going to migrate that right now because it's very simple for you to do, and it's 4 functions. So to save time, we'll just cut this bit out. Go ahead and cut it, paste it. Okay, it looks good. Go ahead and compile and save again. No errors, perfect. Now the last bit we'll need is the actual useActor inputs and the update loop for getUsableActor focus. So we'll skip grabbing the event here again just to make it simple. Go ahead and hook up the getUsableActor focus event to the loop here. We'll remove the isMovementLocked. So now you can see why we set up the isValid, because it's going to start ticking through right once the game starts here. So now we have the server event that the player is going to call when it wants to try and use something. So we'll just grab the input for it. So we get the input useActor. So when a player presses E, the server tries to see if there's an actor by performing a raycast from its location, and then if there is one, it'll do the unused. Okay, so let's go into the character here and just adjust the camera so it's a bit more over the shoulder for demo purposes. And then in order to get the outline to show, we need to actually set up in the post process a blendable. So if you just search for outline, you want to pick the outline custom depth inst. Okay, so let's go ahead and drag in a few assets here for testing. So we'll drag in 2 loot containers. Let's throw in, let's throw in the door. We'll add a storage pot. Let's find some basic items to pick up. So let's put a shield and a weapon and some spiky shoulders. Okay, so let's go ahead and try this out. Okay, we can pick up shoulders, equip the shoulders, we can loot the container. Perfect. Door opens, door closes. Pick up the shield. Okay. So the shield and the weapon are not equipping because they use sockets, and we haven't set up the sockets onto our skeleton in the new project. So if we look at the skeleton in the inventory character, you can see we have 4 slots. We have the offhand slot, the left ring, main hand, and right ring. If you already have sockets set up in your own project, you can simply add these ones or rename. But since this is a basic project, we're just going to go ahead and delete the skeleton from the third person project and replace it with our inventory one. And then we'll move that skeleton over. Now this is a great place to save and close and make a quick little backup of the work we've done so far, because now we're into the cleanup phase. Okay, and when we reload, we see these errors because we need to fix up redirectors. So let's go to the content folder and click Fix Up Redirectors in folder. Great, everything seems to be fine. Oh, okay. So we have an issue. If you're seeing this in your project, I'm going to show you what it's caused by. If you look here at the Unreal skeleton, when we show bones, this is what the skeleton should look like. But there's a bug from 4.8, which is fixed in 4.11, where the third-person project animations have a messed up rig. Here's what it should look like. The animations that come with the inventory system have been fixed. So if we go ahead and delete the third-person anim blueprint and replace it with the one from the inventory system, we can get rid of these bad animations. Fix up redirectors in folder, and then we'll move over the good third-person animations that have been corrected. And again, this is fixed in 4.11. But if you've been seeing any weird issues with your animations blending using the third-person ones, that's why. So try that again. Okay, great. Everything's working. Let's start cleaning up these folders. So if we go into Static Mesh Dead Hero, let's replace his textures with the ones from your project. Now we can go ahead into the character and we can remove the skeletal mesh, replace its reference with your one. Now we can simply delete the materials and the textures for the character. Okay, let's go ahead and move the environment folder. If you have your own folder, you'd probably want to move them one folder at a time, the materials, meshes, and textures. Now we'll move all the items. This might take a little bit. There's a lot of stuff there. Okay, next we'll move the maps. And then the materials. We only really have one sound, so we'll just quickly move that over. And then the UI textures and the blueprints. Okay, that's everything moved over. Just double check. So the demo folder here, the example NPCs, we're not going to move that. Again, you can move it yourself. Just go ahead and fix up redirectors in all the folders again. Hit play. Okay, everything seems fine. So let's save and quit. Do one more backup here quickly because we're going to start deleting stuff. So let's remove the saved and intermediate folder, go into the content folder and delete the inventory system. Open up your project again. Great, no errors. Everything seems fine. Okay, thumbnail map's good. Let's go into the inventory map. Okay, there you go. That's how you migrate it into any project. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask in the forum or contact us at support@vanguardinteractive.com. Thanks for watching.